I think it leads up to like hundreds of billions, if not over $1 trillion of investments in the U.S. Economy, in domestic economy.
My guess is it's always happening. But like,
oh, really?
FDI is always, other people are always investing in the United States, yes.
But the Democrats did not take any of the tariffs away. They added to the tariffs.
So
Sure.
yes, of course, like the Godfather, they got to pay tribute to the Godfather. And I'll tell you why I think he should even raise the tariffs more, not just on the other countries on the earth, but especially the people that are going to be our enemies for the next world war that's coming up.
I think you're kind of overstating how catastrophic they've been. There's really no proof that they've been
There's
catastrophic.
plenty of proof. They are catastrophic. And there's everything about this argument is completely and totally wrong.
Was that it's been totally unfair to the U.S. and that these tariffs like made things like fair.
There's fentanyl coming through that open border, and which is coming from China.
By the way, one thing I love about the tariff thing is that Democrats have suddenly become super libertarian. Like, suddenly they don't want any taxes, and I think that's great. I wish they had that same energy toward corporate taxes.
Why do you think that we were losing in trade?
Because our leaders have completely sold us out to the rest of the country, to the rest of the world, and they don't want to help out Americans.
So I don't think the current administration believes in free trade. I don't think very many people right now, unfortunately, in the United States believe in free trade. Would you be okay with somebody stabbing you?
That's completely unrelated.
But tariffs are going to make it more expensive.
Excuse me?
Tariff will make it more expensive.
That's an assumption.
Well, no, that's a factual reality.
Sure.
Are there other countries that are better than America right now?
I didn't say that they were better.
Okay.
I said
agree.
America's the best country.
I
We're
agree.
in charge. We're the leader.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so normally this would be a Piers Morgan Uncensored video, but they're on break right now, and I've kind of been wanting to kind of wean myself off of exclusively doing Piers Morgan Uncensored debates because they're not really debates. And I also came across a pretty good debate channel, Modern Day Debate, which is who we're going to showcase here today. And we've got Destiny coming in, as you've seen, against 4 Trump supporters. I know it says 5 on the video and they say 7 in the intro, but apparently 3 of them didn't show up. Something like that, so I don't know what was going on, but there was only 4 of them. So we'll get into all this. A couple of these guys are just duds. To be honest with you, we're going to go over it because they do make some arguments. It's neither here nor there. I guess I'll fill in a little bit for that. So let's go ahead and get into this. But before we do, y'all smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here and you want to stay up to date with news and politics and how you're being manipulated by corporate press news articles, because that's what we do, folks. We read the news and we analyze what's being said. So y'all do that. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. And if you would be so inclined, I'd be deeply appreciative if you guys would click that join button, sign up, and become a member. That's the best way to help this channel expand and grow. So y'all do all that. Let's just go ahead and get into it, right?
My name is Stephen Bonnell. I'm known online as Destiny, and I'm here to debate 7 Trump supporters today. My first prompt today is that I think that the tariff regime that Trump has installed has already been catastrophic for the United States, and I think it will continue to be catastrophic for the United States, even if he doesn't go through with it. I think that the goals of the tariffs in general are contradictory. I don't think that you can both work out good trade deals where we can import stuff from other nations and protect domestic manufacturing. It seems like there's a lot of tension between a lot of the things that he wants to do with these tariffs, and I think that the tariffs undermine already established trade policies that we had with other countries, namely the trade deal that we had with Mexico and Canada that Trump had worked out in his first administration. And I think it creates a level of instability in this country that makes it impossible for large-scale capital expenditure because you are completely and totally in the dark about what the tariffs will look like in the future. So it discourages people from investing in long-term manufacturing here. So even if you were in favor of any of the stated goals of the tariffs, I don't know if they accomplish any of them.
Okay, so Destiny, you say the tariffs are bad, right? Okay, why did the Democrats, like Biden, totally continue them and even added more of them on China, especially? Sure, there's like stuff going on with Taiwan, but the Democrats did not take any of the tariffs away. They added to the tariffs, and the Democrats, they govern better, right? So if that's one of the policies they get, then the tariffs are actually good for Americans.
So I think
the Democrats did it, right?
Well, so I think there's two separate
Democrats
things.
govern better. Yeah.
But I agree, they do govern better. So I think there's 2 separate things going on. So I think, number one, I don't think that tariffs are necessarily bad in all circumstances. Okay. I think as econ policy, as Trump is using them, they're generally bad. And I think when they're literally across the entire board, I think they're also bad. I think that targeted towards particular countries or sectors, they can be okay. So yeah. I believe, for instance, that I think Biden raised them against, I think, like electric vehicles.
Yeah, tariffs.
But tariffs alone, I don't
think drill, baby, drill.
Well, I don't think tariffs alone are enough to affect your ideal economic outcome because like after you tariff a country, they can also ship to other countries, and there are other people that can ship from there to your country, or you can just continue to import from other
That's
countries.
true, but they have to deal with the U.S. because we're number one. They just have
Well,
to.
sure,
in
but I'm saying that,
many
like-
instances,
Yeah.
they just have to. They can't not do that. And even then,
Well, there are other consumers.
there's other workarounds to probably make them.
There are
do
other
that.
consumers on the
Because
planet.
the U.S. has just been like undermined a lot in these instances.
I don't
which
think
is
that's
also
true.
why the European Union recently they came to the table. They even said the European Union lady, she barely said anything at this press conference. But what she did say was that it's been totally unfair to the U.S. and that these tariffs like made things like fair.
Sure.
Just
So
fair,
okay, wait.
yeah.
So just on the first
At
point.
least things should be fair,
What-
right?
Yeah, I agree, but I don't even know
Yeah.
if Trump knows what fair means right now.
No, but the
So
European Union lady
I understand. We're
said
not,
that,
we're not
and
even,
Trump
we're
was
not
the
even
one
there
who
yet.
brought
So
her
I'm
to
trying to
the
explain the
table.
difference between Biden's approach to the tariffs versus Trump's approach.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Biden did continue some. He did some more targeted ones on China. We can talk about whether or not that's good or bad, but the most important part was he paired those tariffs with domestic policy, with like the CHIPS Act, to also incentivize more manufacturing and more capital investment in domestic industry in the United States in a way that's a little bit more reliable and long term than just a tariff that could come and go every 4 years depending upon the whims of the president. That was one thing. And then the second thing is also it's easy to put a tariff on, it's hard to take a tariff off. If you put a tariff on a country, they're probably going to retaliate, which China has.
No, but like I said, well, China, that's like an ongoing.
It's an ongoing thing. But I'm just saying,
But
just real
that's why
quick,
the
if you-
Democrats added tariffs to it.
If you tariff a country and then they tariff you back, that's an easy thing that both sides can do. Escalation.
He was
but-
winning the trade war with China beforehand. The
I
Democrats,
don't think so.
The Democrats added to it. They agreed with that because they continued those policies. And I'd say he should add to the policies
Sure.
in that regard. And just on that first
Wait,
point,
wait, real
with
quick.
the
We hit there. I'm just saying.
semiconductors, He brought the Taiwan
Sure.
semiconductors
We're-
to America.
we're not
That's
making those semiconductors
30% of the total semiconductor
We're-
production in the world.
That's
okay?
absolutely not happened yet.
No,
but
well, he's
when I-
bringing that in. Like these things don't happen overnight.
Well,
you know.
they don't. They don't happen in 4 years either. But what I was saying is that also, like, to take a tariff down requires some bilateral negotiation for both of you guys to remove tariffs because it's unlikely if you just take yours down that the other side will respond in kind. So once tariffs are up, it's easy to keep them. It's hard to take them down.
Why didn't the European Union did? They capitulated.
Well, we don't know that yet. We don't have a.
They did. They just came to the table very recently.
They
This was
said
like
that,
last
but
week.
we don't have an actual deal yet. We just have like words so far. Like we also had words with Japan. We've also had words with Vietnam. We had words with the UK, but we don't have actual solid deals.
Okay,
yet.
but they're still coming to the table and they're signaling that they're going to go along with these deals that generally should be better, should benefit the U.S. But I agree that these policies could do more for Americans domestically, actually help out Americans start families here instead of helping China or Israel or just all these countries.
I mean, it's possible. So I mean,
But, what did you think of the freaking the U.S. Mexico Canada thing? You said you supported that with Trump in the beginning,
the
right?
trade deal, yeah. I mean, it's basically an expansion of NAFTA, right?
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm curious about, why do you think that we were losing in trade?
Because our leaders have completely sold us out to the rest of the country, to the rest of the world, and they don't want to help out Americans.
So who do you think is
Trump's
like-
at least starting the trend where that needs to start helping people who live here. I know a lot of these policies help out these like big companies that he has connections to, and that needs to stop. So he needs
sure,
to
so
start
I'm not
helping
even
out
thinking- not even that far along.
Americans.
I'm just thinking, like,
this is the step in the right
who do we
direction.
feel
though.
who do we feel like we were losing out to?
The rest of the world. European Union even said that it was completely one-sided, the trade deals before, and he completely redid NAFTA, right?
How is it? Well, he didn't completely redo it. It was slightly modified. How do we feel like the rest of the world was beating us? Does it seem possible that the United States was literally losing to the rest of the world,
Yeah,
but we still have
taxpayer
like the best
dollars
economy?
go to aid for like dumb stuff in these other countries that should be going here, just across the board, not just for
Okay, so I want to take a step back and I just want to look at the broad picture. So in the 4 years under Biden, the USD is like the strongest it ever has been. The American consumer is the strongest it ever has been. Compared to the rest of the like economically developed countries on the planet, we were doing better on inflation. Our economy growth has been huge. We still lead the world in several industries. I don't understand where this idea
that
comes
was
from.
because of Trump's policies enacted during his previous term that Biden profited off of.
I think that
These
was
things don't happen overnight,
let's assume that was true. Trump didn't do all of the tariffs in his first 4 years.
The economy was pretty good under Trump. But then you would say, oh, that's because of the economy that he inherited from Obama. Huh?
Well, I mean, he inherited a decent economy from Obama, and I don't think he did anything to.
Oh, but Trump can't like bestow a good economy to Biden.
Well, he didn't hurt the economy. I don't think he did
Yeah, and
anything
like I
against
said,
the
Biden continued a lot of these policies. That
Sure, but I'm just saying that like when we look at the rest of the world, okay, ignore U.S. presidents or whatever. I'm just saying that it feels like I don't think anybody else on the planet looks at the United States and goes, "Wow, look at that sucker country that we're all taking advantage of." I think that we still have.
yes, they do.
Which
India for sure.
Do you think that-
looks at that?
do you think
They're
that the
very
average
arrogant
Indian-
in the way that they take advantage, and that they don't say that, but that general sentiment
sure, but like
is
if you think
the
in what ways,
mindset
in what
for
ways
a lot
is
of
India,
immigrants.
In what ways is India like better than the United States?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they feel very entitled to taking advantage of, like they say, yeah, we're gonna go sucker these people. A lot of these scams, not just in India, in other East Asian countries, a lot of these other countries they just come here to scam, or they take advantage of our system that allows them to scam overseas. A lot of people here, what they do is that they start companies overseas to do it cheaper, just so they could profit, but that doesn't really help Americans.
Okay, so the basic premise of that is that America's not being taken advantage of, or at least it wasn't. Well, that's just garbage, if you ask me. Like, with all the trade barriers, the market manipulation, the monetary manipulation, and all that was going on, it was making it very hard for American companies to export just about anything, right? Our exports were a lot more expensive, and it was really tough for American companies to compete in these global markets, and the countries were specifically doing this on purpose to take advantage of our system, right? This whole idea, like they were talking about America-Mexico, our trade negotiations, NAFTA and the AMA, right? So that was outright garbage before Donald Trump came in this second term, right? We were getting tariffed by Canada, like through the freaking nose on a lot of dairy products, sure, specifically targeted to certain products, but even still. Right, they were supposed to be free trade between all the countries. Now, the tariffs between these countries specifically, we know what those were meant for. Those were meant as a utilitarian tool to get these countries to secure their borders, because we want a secure border, for crying out loud. Canada is freaking going socialist over here, and they don't really care about immigration. They want open borders. Mexico, it's kind of a third world-ish, second world, whatever you want to call it, and they just don't have that sort of control over their border, and the cartels run the border in Mexico. So Donald Trump was like, no, screw this. We're going to punish you economically if you guys don't clear up your borders. And they capitulated, as a matter of fact, remove the tariffs and try to retaliate with tariffs. We'll try to get that back down to zero, because we do want free trade. Now, that was the point of the tariffs between these countries, right? Just right here. As far as India, I think what this guy's talking about has absolutely nothing to do with geopolitical trade, for crying out loud. Like, what's going on with India and these scammers that are scamming American, like mostly seniors, has nothing to do with the government of India. However, the one thing that I find fascinating, another aspect to these tariffs, is what Trump is trying to do, and I'm not sure if it's going to actually work. It may work in certain areas. It's trying to bring back manufacturing. Well, I'm sorry, that's probably not going to happen to the extent that a lot of people are believing that it's going to happen. What Donald Trump is trying to say and what a lot of people think are kind of two different things. There's a pretty big gap in between those. Like, Donald Trump essentially wants specific targeted industries to come back to the United States for manufacturing, right? We can't manufacture everything, for crying out loud, because it is really hard for American companies to compete with the dirt cheap labor in places like India and China, where they can employ slaves, for crying out loud, to do the work for free. And they don't have to have a safe work environment. They don't have to have paid time off. None of these things. So it's very hard for American companies to compete with that cheap of labor. This is also part of the tariff regime here, if you will, to make those goods more expensive. Now, we get into the debate later on, consumer taxes versus tax on the company from whatever country that is. We'll get into that later. I just wanted to break that down right quick. So before I rant on forever, let's keep going.
Well, I just want to say up front first is we are unlikely to agree on any statistics or any history or anything like that from your exchange just earlier. Frankly, none of what you said is substantiatable from any information, data, research, resources I have. And I'm sure my Twitter feed doesn't look like your Twitter feed. Let's forget all that, because we're not doing a fact-finding show. We don't have computers here. We don't have documents to prove one thing or another.
Can I ask, I'm just curious, how do you decide what numbers to trust?
Well, that's why I want to avoid this discussion, because we don't have numbers to.
Well, I'm just saying,
present
like in
and to-
general, like if you see Kyle Kalinske or Destiny or Charlie Kirk or Trump, if somebody says numbers, how do you decide, like, oh, I think that number is credible or that number is not credible? Like,
By looking at the numbers, I've done some of my own research when I found interest in it or I wanted to. I've seen evidence of things differently than how other people see it. Just from my own life or from going to the store and seeing it's like, oh, well, the price of that went up and down. Well, yes, that's exactly what I expected from what was going on in the news or data that I've come across. So I would say there's no one source, there's no one way, but I would say most of what I internalize critically. But you would probably say that about the information you internalize. So I'm not really interested in throwing facts or figures unless we can actually have physical facts and figures. But on the topic of tariffs, what is a fair tariff? Should we have tariffs? I mean, that's, I think, a question I need to know what your opinion is to really debate tariffs.
I mean, I would say in general, no. When I look at trade between two countries, there's a concept underpinning trade called comparative advantage, that some economies might be better at creating certain goods or services than other economies. If you can make it better than the other guy can make it per hour of labor, then you let the other guy make it, and then you focus on what you're good at. In a household, for instance, maybe a wife is good at doing home caring duties, and maybe a husband is good at doing office duties. If you switch these people around, you just create a worse situation for everybody, right? So when I think about tariffs, I'm generally thinking, like I guess my roots are libertarianish. 20 years ago, I'm thinking more free trade. Like, as long as another country can create something better for us and they're not engaged in deceptive or harmful trade practices, which is a thing you could talk about, then I would say generally there should be no tariffs. Yeah.
So now, in the case of a country or an economy that definitely has a stronger advantage one way or another, if that is a problem for your local economy, is applying a tariff fair, something to help reduce the input to your country that impacts what you're able to produce locally.
Yeah, I think you can have a conversation about like things that can hurt your local economies, and I think it's fair to have a conversation about that. Although very broadly, doing tariffs is generally not the way to do this. I would say like a really great example of a way to engage in some form of protectionism could be found in Trump's first term when he expanded on the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement. One of the numbers that we heard a lot recently was Canada's 145% tariff on dairy or whatever. So
Yeah.
that wasn't really true. What it was is if Canada's own exporters, if their own local producers weren't able to sell enough in their country and they were importing too much, then those tariffs would start to kick in to protect their domestic manufacturing. Well, I say manufacturing, but it was their domestic animal agriculture sector for that. So like in
Conditional,
that- yeah.
conditional, but a tariff nonetheless.
Well, yeah, but I mean, conditional but a tariff nonetheless is important. The conditionality part, I think, is important because broad tariffs are, I think, incredibly destructive. But like specific protectionist things like that could make sense, right?
Yeah, but still, it's a tariff. Conditional though it is, they've calculated, well, if we can't do at least this much business, it's going to be detrimental for our country. So we need to slow down or stem the.
I understand
external
when you
business.
say and it's a tariff, but like, would you be okay with somebody stabbing you?
That's completely unrelated. We're talking
It is
about buying
unrelated.
milk.
No, I understand, but I'm saying if somebody were to stab you, generally we're not okay with that, right?
No, but
if
that's-
somebody was like performing surgery on you, it's probably okay, but they're still stabbing you. But it's very, 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 very different, right?
That's not a
equivalence?
sincere argument. That's a completely insincere argument.
Okay.
You can't have a discussion. You're being evasive about whether or not a tariff is fair, and you're trying to throw conditions into it. And then when I've got you painted into the corner of, yes, it's fair with conditions, then you're talking about surgery. It's unrelated. If there's a tariff on surgery, that would be in topic, but there isn't a tariff on surgery.
Well, I'm just saying that things can be okay with conditions, but not okay, like just
Dairy farming isn't surgery.
Okay, so I
I feel
understand
like
what
I'm
you're
mentally
saying.
flushed.
So surgery isn't the same thing as tariffs. I'm just saying that like conditionally some things are okay, but applied very broadly, it's like disastrous. So I think like conditionally tariffs, like almost all forms of policy can be okay in certain conditions, but applied broadly, they could be really bad, I think. So that's my position on tariffs, yeah.
Okay. So, but that's not necessarily the case. Most tariffs are either conditional or on certain market segments. So lots of the tariffs overseas, especially to China, Taiwan, whatever, from my understanding, because I don't have the facts sitting in front of me right now, is that there are certain markets that aren't included, and it's addressing imbalances from where Trump or whoever's in charge of looking at the numbers feels as though there's an imbalance where it's impacting our ability to export.
Okay, so I really couldn't handle that guy all that much. He should not even be there. I'm sorry, my dude, but you seem to have zero debate skills at all. You can't even understand conditional hypotheticals. What Destiny was trying to say right here, it was kind of in a roundabout way applicable, but not really. I mean, the applicable hypothetical here would be more like, is it okay to stab a doctor that performed a botched surgery? Because that would be a lot more applicable to this situation, because like he was saying, sure, it's conditional tariffs, but they're still tariffs. We're still supposed to have this trade agreement that there was supposed to be free trade between the countries. There was not supposed to be any conditions whatsoever. Right? The conditions don't matter. We were still getting tariffed for these goods, right? And 145%. No, there were some that were upwards of 300%, and it was on all dairy products, essentially. Sure, there was a few exclusions, but for the most part, there were some other tariffs too, but we're not going to get into all that. This is a very, very fascinating conversation to have about all these things, because tariffs, the way Trump is using them, is very utilitarian, and we're going to get into that later, but a lot of people don't seem to understand the utility in these tariffs at all for some reason, right? And how Trump is applying these tariffs all the way across the board, right? And multilaterally. In some cases, it's to negotiate away trade imbalances, market manipulation, and all this other stuff. And in other cases, it's targeted to bring back manufacturing. In some cases, like with Canada and Mexico, it is to get them to secure their borders to help us secure our borders and stop the flow of fentanyl coming from both directions into the country. So a lot of people, they just don't seem to understand this. They just see tariff and then they start bashing their freaking face against the wall. And it's like, what are you doing, my dude? Come on. You got people like Lawrence O'Donnell who continuously says these tariffs are just a tax on you. Well, that's not the whole truth. It really, really isn't. And a lot of people say this. Destiny makes this argument here in a little while. It's just a consumer tax. Well, no. When it's applied in a certain way, it's not. And I've proven time and time and time again on this channel, that's not all what it is. And what I find so fascinating, and I imagine some people are going to do it down in the comments, so I'm going to go ahead and warn you that what you're about to do is stupid. Go ahead and start typing away at your comments, but the tariffs aren't necessarily a tax on you. Oh, he said the wrong thing. He didn't want to hear that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, they're not. Now, like I said, I've proven time and time again on this channel. You go read news. This is what I do. I'm not an economic expert or anything like that. I just read a lot of news, folks. And I do research into these news articles to make sure that the news organization isn't lying to us, which they do a lot of, and they do a lot of manipulation as well. So looking into this, all right, I've covered several stories at this point. Check the archive, by the way, that these companies, they're responding to the tariff. And the corporate press thinks that, we've got a gotcha on Donald Trump because they want to make Donald Trump look bad. What they do is they publish a news article saying, look, prices go up, to make you freak out and bash your face against the wall at what Trump is doing. But then you read into the news article just a little bit and you see, hang on, Donald Trump implemented a 15% tariff on whatever this is. Well, they're talking about a 4% price increase. Well, hang on just a second. Where's the other 11% go? Oh, that's right. The company in the foreign country is absorbing 11% of that 15% tariff. You pay 4%. So what does that mean, by the way? That means that Donald Trump decided, well, you know, all these lefties, they want to tax the corporations through the freaking nose. Well, I want to bring back manufacturing. So, yeah, we're not going to tax our corporations. We're going to incentivize these foreign corporations to bring manufacturing here by tariffing their products and making them pay for it. And all they got to do, build you a manufacturing plant in the United States and we'll be good. That's what he's doing. So he's raising taxes on foreign companies. Raising the corporate tax on foreign companies. What's up with that, left? You don't like that at all, Democrats, for some reason? You freak out and bash your head against the wall because he's taxing foreign corporations and not ours? Go ahead and try to reconcile your argument now. I'm just saying, let's keep going.
Okay. Well, hello, Steven. Nice to meet you. We're talking about Trump's tariffs today, and you've expressed that you don't think they're that great or what he's done. And I want to
say catastrophic, but yeah.
I want to say he's done really good, and I'll tell you why. I think he should even raise the tariffs more, not just on the other countries on the earth, but especially the people that are going to be our enemies for the next world war that's coming up, which has already started. I'll talk about that a little later, but what I think one of the best reasons for Trump to raise tariffs even higher than they are now is because there's so many illegal immigrants coming here, being led into the country, and of course they're having babies, right? And those babies need to be fed. So I think instead of just like punishing the citizens of the country, right, by raising taxes on them, I think it's a much better idea to sort of get money from a different source other than the United States taxpayer to help with this problem that we have of this influx of illegal immigration through that open border, which is another thing Trump did good to at least address the idea that it's sensitive, like it's a danger to have it, especially with this coming world war, how there's fentanyl coming through that open border, and which is coming from China. I don't know if you guys have information about that, but it's being produced in China and it's coming north of the border through Mexico with the cartels. Now, if they're doing that, and since we haven't gotten to a hot war with them yet, the best thing to do is get as much money as we can through tariffs, which would be legal and not so much aggressive in the sense of like a hot war. And I think, yes, I think Trump is doing a great job what he's doing with what his opposition is. And just for basically those two reasons which kind of connect, that, yes, there's a huge problem with illegal immigration. And
well, let's give Steven a chance.
Okay.
Well, yeah, okay, so I guess just on on one of these, when we say tariff, are we still under the impression that the other country pays the tariff and not the American consumer?
I think the people have lied about that for so long that people are just starting to become aware of it. And I think people probably lie too.
Well, so like what do you think like tariffs are collected from?
Well, exactly like I just said, get it from these countries. They want to make deals with the United States, China. They're a massive producer with all those coal power plants that they're able to produce a lot cheaply. And they need a market for that.
Well, sure. I mean, they have the entire rest of the world, not just the United States.
Well, the rest of the this earth does not have the economy like the United States.
The rest of the earth has a far bigger
to
economy than
purchase
the
them.
entirety of the United States. Right?
Pardon me?
The rest of the world combined has a larger economy than the United States.
Oh,
right?
so that's what you're saying. So I guess you're proving my point then. If the rest of the economy is bigger than the United States, then yeah, we should get as much from them as we can.
Well, I guess, but what I'm saying is that like if there's a tariff that we enact against another country, a tariff is something that a consumer in the United States pays when they import something. That's an import tax.
I don't think Americans should pay more. I think we should pay less.
But that's what a tariff is.
No, I like I just said, we shouldn't pay more.
But
we
that-
should
but a
get
tariff-
more money from the other people.
A tariff,
Because
is, but
the
a
United
tariff
States
is an
is-
import tax, right?
Excuse me?
A tariff is an import tax. Like all the money collected from tariffs is just more taxes that
Yeah,
are paid
that's
for
why
by
they
Americans.
need to work these deals out better so
You
that
can't-
the United States taxpayer isn't covering the burden for all this humanitarian efforts that are
Humanitarian
taking
efforts
place.
don't have anything to do with tariffs. Tariffs are just when you
Talk
import
about the
goods.
illegal immigrants that people are like okay with, you know, like
So that's
how
fine.
it's okay to bring them here. And
Immigration is
this idea,
a separate-
listen, this
separate-
idea that's okay to make other countries better before making our country better.
Do you think there are
that's
other
the whole
countries that-
thing
are there
about
other countries that are-
America first.
Are there other countries that are better than America right now?
I didn't say that they were better.
Okay,
I said
agree.
America's the best country. We're
agree.
in charge. We're the leader. and there's a lot going on. So
Sure.
yes, of course, like the Godfather, they got to pay tribute to the Godfather.
But the
they got to
people paying
kiss the
tribute-
rings.
Do you understand that tariffs are an import tax?
Yeah, I understand that. So when China wants to sell their products here, they should not be as expensive as they want it. It should be as inexpensive as we want
But
it to
tariffs
be.
are going to make it more expensive.
Excuse me?
Tariff will make it more expensive.
That's an assumption.
well, no, that's a factual reality.
Well,
If they
it's,
sell
once
something for
again, it's
100
an assumption that you're thinking if we do this, it'll go one way. I'm saying no. Americans should pay less. The taxpayer should pay less. The tariffs that we charge, say China to do business here, any country, India, Italy, anything, Iran. Yeah, they got to pay more. You know, they want to
If
do
it
business
comes
here.
out in a year or two that we're paying more for things as a result of tariffs, would that make you change your mind on tariffs?
I still think that Americans should pay less and other countries should pay more. So they've discussed earlier how the numbers can be fudged. And, you know, there's that famous book, How to Lie with Numbers. So the specific numbers people could lie about. You know,
Yeah,
I've
but you'll see it
debated
at the
plenty
store.
of
I mean, there-
Globers. I know that
There are people now that are
lie
looking
with
at their
numbers, right?
the stuff that they're paying for, and it is starting to go up. There are people that are having to put 10, 50% additional
then-
charges to cover
so
the
then
tariffs.
that's one way to motivate the American manufacturing to increase. Like, so if you're saying China, they want to charge us more for their products, well, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be importing their products, and it should say made in USA instead of made in China.
Sure, but the made in USA stuff is going to cost more money.
Well, that'll be jobs for Americans, right?
the expense for all of the consumers,
that's
right?
taxable income that will stay in the country.
At the expense of the entire American economy, right? We're going to have to pay more for everything.
So what do you think is the bad thing, that people get higher wages? You think that's a bad thing, that people are going to get higher wages because it's not going to be made in China anymore?
I don't think the higher wages are going to matter when everything else is more expensive than
You
your
don't
wages
think the
have grown.
higher wage is going to matter?
Not when everything else becomes more expensive. No,
That's why it needs to be made in America.
it's going to be more expensive if it's made in America.
Well, I mean, once again, that's an assumption. I'm operating more on like the principle. Yeah,
the principle
we should
also doesn't
we
make any
should
sense.
have
The
made
principle-
in USA. We should have more manufacturing. We should not outsource our manufacturing for anything to other countries.
So should we make every single thing that we consume in the United States?
I think that would be a perfect idea. I think the North America and South America are big enough and work well enough together that we could just say peace out, rest of the earth, and just be solid North and South America.
So what part of our economy we take workers from to start manufacturing fabrics and textiles?
That's a great idea. You're saying where are the workers going to come from?
Yeah.
All these people that are just hanging out, no job, getting unemployment, everything. You know, every city you see people just hanging out. Give them a job. You
So
know,
when
they'll
Trump
be
says
at
right
that
now that
time.
the-
There'll
so-
be a robot. It'll be like artificial intelligence. You know,
Okay.
it'll be like computers and robotics. And yes, people will be able to get simple jobs. And so, yeah, to answer your question, where is that labor force going to come from? It's going to come from the United States.
So it's absolutely not going to come from the United States. We absolutely
Well-
don't have enough workers to cover for all of the
Well,
imports
that's
that we
an
do from other
assumption.
markets. It's not an assumption; it's reality. The unemployment is low enough that we don't have all of these
right
extra
now,
workers.
we have
and the fact of the
these
matter is
bad
that the
deals
biggest
with China,
you say bad
right?
deals, but the most important places that America is making progress in right now are fields like artificial intelligence. I don't know why we would take from that to mine coal or to manufacture textiles.
Well, the AI would be able to do it effortlessly without even having to.
If the AI
worry
could do it
about
effortlessly, why isn't the AI doing it now?
It takes time. People are uncomfortable with it. It needs to be more or less rolled out in a major way. And I do think one thing about that, people need to become more comfortable with AI.
So wouldn't it be better to roll that out then by having people continue to focus on that research and then just import cheap stuff from other countries until we figure out how to AI it?
I think the best way to be to just start American manufacturing utilizing artificial intelligence and advanced robotics as soon as possible.
Sure.
And get Americans trained in how to write code, how to interact. And every menial job, it won't even be like a human making like the specific logistical decisions.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But then I feel like it would make sense to just import the stuff from other countries and let them deal with the manufacturing while we do the research and innovation in AI.
I could agree with you to a certain extent as long as Americans pay less and other countries pay more.
Sure, the way that we pay less is by importing it. That's why we import it, because it's cheaper.
Well, that's at the immediate present. Yeah, that's why I'm saying they can make the changes now to increase how much more we get from other countries with these bad deals that are taking place and make better deals so that the American taxpayer pays less,
I don't
not more.
I don't think you can just make a deal to pay less unless when people start throwing out tariffs.
That's why we have President Trump, right,
Yeah,
guys?
and nothing
That's
has
why we
gotten-
have President Trump.
Yeah, but he hasn't made anything cheaper yet.
Well, in a way, you're right, because the prices they have just been steadily going up through every presidency that I've seen in my life. But that's the point. I voted for Trump, 3 times? He won 3 times because he's saying the things that are true to me, that America should be first. If we are Americans, like, I don't know if you're Canadian or something, you're American?
Very American.
You're American. What do you want, like, some other country to be doing better? Do you want America
I don't think
to
any
be
other country
servicing
is
them
doing better. I think America is doing the best right now. I don't think other countries are doing better than us. I think there's a bad assumption that every game is zero sum, and if somebody else is winning, that we're losing. But when you go to the store and you give them $10 for, I don't know, for whatever you buy, you're both winning in that transaction. You want the thing more than they want the thing, and they
yeah.
want the $10 more than.
You mean like if we have allies?
Okay, so I don't know if they brought some of these people on there just to make Trump supporters look stupid, but this guy makes Trump supporters look very, very stupid. You can't just say, let's make prices go down. No, that doesn't work. Prices never go down. This is something I couldn't stand during the campaign trail when Donald Trump was saying, we're going to bring prices down. No, you'll never bring prices down. That's not how inflation works, for crying out loud. It just can't work like that. Sure, on certain items, they might come down temporarily, but they'll always go up. Everything always gets more expensive, right? The idea here, though, Donald Trump can dictate prices is just pie in the sky stuff. It's just straight up delusional. And I can't believe that guy would sit there and try to make those arguments. You know, Destiny, he's right about a lot of this. A lot of people don't seem to understand this idea of importing certain things. We can't make everything, for crying out loud, in the United States. That's an impossibility, right? Because of Colombian coffee. Now, I know what you might be thinking, well, that's just coffee. Yeah, we can't make Colombian coffee in the United States. Some people love Colombian coffee, right? We don't grow bananas in the United States like they do avocados. There's many, many products, right? It's cheaper to buy a Samsung TV that's made in China or wherever the hell they're made and have them shipped over here than have an American company do it because of the cheap labor. Right? But tariffing these items gives American companies a leg up, right? That will make prices kind of equalize. This is something Destiny was saying, that just because it's made in America means it's going to be more expensive. Well, that's not necessarily true, right? If we can get into a regime where we're manufacturing things and, everything's running like a well-oiled machine, I mean, look at cars, vehicles, for crying out loud. American vehicles are definitely cheaper than import vehicles, generally speaking, just as a general statement. All right, there's a lot of things, like weapons manufacturing. That's something we do a lot of. There's all kinds of products that we could get into that is cheaper to make in America and to buy American, right? This is what we want. But the idea that we can make everything, I think, is just pie in the sky nonsense. And like I said, I think they just brought that dude on just to make Trump supporters look bad for some reason. And, Destiny, he's doing a pretty good job of restraining himself, to be honest with you, because I've seen him on a lot of Piers Morgan Uncensored videos, and he just goes off. Just blah. He's lost his freaking mind in a lot of instances. A lot of his posts on X. Yeah. It's like, what's wrong with this dude, man? He's like freaking losing it sometimes. But, he's still there for the most part. And I give him props on this. He's making a decent argument here. And he's right in a lot of these instances. But I still think the regime that Donald Trump is putting out there in the world is going to be a net positive all the way across the board, right? Working all these trade deals out, I think, is going to benefit the United States. We're going to bring back as much manufacturing as we possibly can. I mean, he's right about this. Everything can't be manufactured in the United States. It just doesn't work that way. A lot of places, they have the setup for it. They're just ready to go. They've figured everything out. They're producing it very, very cheaply. Cheap labor. American labor can never compete with this. Never compete with this, because we have all these amenities and benefits and all this other stuff that pretty much dictated by law in many cases. Safe work environments. They don't have to have that overseas in a lot of places, Right, so it's just we just can't compete in certain areas. But where we can compete, and I say go all in, and that's what Trump seems to be doing here. But let's keep going.
Good one. Good, Steven.
Okay, so just to kind of reset, I actually agree with you more on tariffs. They are, like all taxes, ultimately paid by the consumer. You seem to have more of a libertarian stance on tariffs and kind of like a free trade. What do you think about the concept of that Bessent, Scott Bessent has shared so often that tariffs are actually a tool being used by the Trump administration to pursue free trade outcomes? Do you think that there's a utility in that?
I don't think the current administration believes in free trade. I don't think very many people right now, unfortunately, in the United States believe in free trade.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that the underlying assumption right now, and I think we've heard it even a little bit today, is people very much believe in a kind of like a fixed pie economically, that if one person is winning, another person is losing.
Zero sum, yeah.
Yeah. And so if people want to talk about tariffs being used as a tool to pursue something, I mean, one, I would ask, what have we gotten from it? And then two, I would say, we're the United States of America. We don't need to use tariffs to pursue a thing. We can just have a conversation and figure that out.
Well, but I just find it interesting that a lot of Democrats will, by the way, one thing I love about the tariff thing is that Democrats have suddenly become super libertarian. Like suddenly they don't want any taxes. And I think that's great. I wish they had that same energy toward corporate taxes. I find it interesting that they want to increase corporate taxes, which, as you know, is ultimately paid by who? By workers, by people as well. It's not paid ultimately by the corporations. There's different studies that look at that. Same grouping of studies that say that 90% of tariffs are paid by consumers, like you've said. But when we look at the actual outcomes, we do see that tariffs, especially in the case of European Union, I think Japan, Korea, they've allowed more access to markets. They've reduced regulatory. Are you familiar with the non-tariff barriers? Regulatory parity, market access, licensing.
So non-tariff
quotas.
barriers, it's not even, we can't even bring that up because we haven't even begun those discussions. And honestly, I think that's what we absolutely have not.
Yes, we did.
Absolutely not.
Prime
I have
example
read the
like
stories. The European Union, we've got kind of these implicit agreements, but there is no comprehensive trade framework that's been set out yet.
Well, but it's clear to me that that's what they're trying to work on. Like you look at the situation with Tesla, right? That the European Union has certain regulatory barriers that doesn't allow Tesla to sell cars in many countries there. So, if those are being lifted, same with meat, sure, they can have regulations on quality. That's fine. But I think there is some regulations that do hurt American companies.
There can be. I mean, we had the WTO for that if we wanted to pursue that. We also can just engage in trade talks and also work on bringing those down. Again, the United States is the largest.
Tariffs is a tool to apply pressure to actually get those things done.
You don't have to.
We do have to. That's what we've been seeing.
We see our wonderful host over here, James. I don't know if he's been on camera before, okay? My guess is James is about 6'4", looks like he can bench 315 in his sleep.
For sure.
Okay? This is a big guy.
Yeah.
Imagine James and I are going to have a one-on-one convo later because James caught me messing around with his wife. I don't know if he's married or husband or non-binary partner, whoever, right?
Yeah, sure.
If James were to tell you, I think I'm going to bring a gun so that I can intimidate Steven, I imagine that we would say to James, you look like you could literally kill him.
Right, but
so
you're talking,
that's the idea that.
wait,
I'm just saying that the United States, we have such a huge economy. What country is it that we're incapable of negotiating with without?
You're conflating brute force with just incentives. When you mentioned this chips and science, this is a perfect example. Actually, you mentioned chips and science earlier. Do you know what that legislation was before it was chips and science? Under the Trump administration, it was called the Endless Frontier Act, and that was to provide innovation. It was only chips and science was bipartisan. I think it was Schumer, and I forgot who the Republican individuals were. But that was only economically viable because of the tariffs that Trump had put on China to bring manufacturing back here. A lot of people don't even recognize that, but there has been a precedent for setting incentives using tariffs as an economic tool to set the correct incentives to align with American interests. Not only economically, by the way, but also geopolitically. When we see it with immigration, I don't want to talk about immigration right now, but we have seen committals from both Canada and Mexico on that stuff. Whether or not it's been affected, that's a totally different story. But I think there is a utility to tariffs, and I don't think I think you're kind of overstating how catastrophic they've been. There's really no proof that they've been catastrophic.
There's plenty of proof. They are catastrophic. And there's everything about this argument is completely and totally wrong. We have the ability to go to any country that we want and negotiate any deal we want. That's why Trump renegotiated NAFTA to the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement. There was no massive tariffing on both sides in order to bring them to the table. We do not need massive tariffs to bring anybody to the table. We're the United States of America. We can bring anybody to the table by just talking to them. So the idea that
how has that worked the last 20 years?
How has that worked the last
Pretty
2
well.
decades?
We tend to win most of our cases we bring to the World Trade Organization. We have trade deals with every country on the planet, basically.
What you see is massive IP theft from China, from places
Sure,
like China.
but
You
IP
see-
theft
you see-
can't be- IP
You see
theft-
massive drug problems coming on. From,
IP theft can't be fixed by just broad tariffs.
if the government, if you apply pressure to the governments that have that are overseeing their citizens, especially like a totalitarian country like China, there are outcomes that are measurable.
In 4 years, if the issues with China related to IP theft or other comparative advantages aren't eliminated or at least severely reduced, would you think that this was a mistake by Trump?
I would say, look, I'm generally, in my libertarian utopian, there's no tariffs. I agree with you on that.
No, I'm not asking. I'm saying that if in 4 years we don't make significant progress with China, would you say this was a failure? We've blown up our trade relations with the rest of the world.
Metrics. It depends on the metrics that you'd have to consider, right? Like,
Okay.
what do you mean? What would warrant significant progress? Is it on the
Some sort of bilateral trade agreement that irons out like our agreements on how intellectual property is to be used, maybe.
Yeah, that could be one. Maybe it could be China not taking over Taiwan. I don't know. There could be I think there's geopolitical. You would agree there's geopolitical utility to tariffs.
No.
Really, none whatsoever.
Why? I guess it depends on how you measure utility. There's utility in a bomb. I mean,
The utility of pressuring countries so that we get America first geopolitical
No.
outcomes. No, really.
that's why none have happened yet, even though we were promised 90 deals in 90 days and we have 0 deals in 100.
No, I wouldn't say zero. I wouldn't say zero deals. We've gotten massive investments from Taiwan. Actually, Taiwan is one of them.
We've been always getting investments. That's just a thing. It's a thing that happens. The U.S. economy, capex is a thing that's always happening. FDI is always happening. It is.
So you think the Stargate thing is that tariffs hadn't play no effect into Stargate?
What is the Stargate thing?
The Stargate initiative is all the different. It's a list of different companies. I have it on my phone. I just forgot them off the top of my head, but that have made. I think it leads up to like hundreds of billions, if not over $1 trillion of investments in the U.S. Economy and domestic economy.
My guess is it's always happening. Like,
Oh, really?
FDI is always. Other people are always investing in the United States. Yes, we have a lot of foreign investment here.
Sure, but there's like. I just find it interesting that you bring up something like the chips in science, which is only economically viable because of tariffs.
That's not true.
It
It's
is-
economically
it is
viable
true.
because
It
it's
is true.
subsidiary by the government,
It's subsidized by which government?
by the United States government.
China subsidized. The thing is that other countries also subsidize.
No, they don't. Do they? How?
Do you think? What do you mean? Governments subsidize products all the time so that they
Our
get a favor-
government, the CHIPS Act was a $500 billion bill where the
Yep.
money was apportioned from the U.S. budget.
Right, but the manufacturing, what the CHIPS Act did, one of the most notable parts of the CHIPS Act was to bring manufacturing back to the States. And that was only economically possible because of the tariffs, because it was more expensive at that point to do business in China and other places because of
I
tariffs.
think it had more to do with the fact that there was a massive government subsidy that financially incentivized you to make it in the United
both.
States.
I mean, both can
It
be
is.
true.
It can be both a little
true.
bit, yeah.
Both can be true.
But the CHIPS Act can be hyper targeted to incentivizing domestic manufacturing without necessarily blowing up a relationship with the rest of the world and without having to do a broad tariff that hurts the entire U.S. market.
I just think that when you frame it as catastrophic, can I paint a picture real quick? Actually, let me just 30 seconds to paint a picture, because you said earlier to one of the other contestants that the domestic policy doesn't match the tariff policy. I actually completely disagree with that. If we imagine 3 levers, right, and 2 of them are domestic policy, we have corporate tax and federal income tax, and then one is international, being the tariff. If we reduce the levers on the domestic taxes and we increase tariff, politically, it's actually a huge win. And I think this is the genius of the Trump administration, is that the domestic policy is extremely hard to change. You have to have approval by the Senate. You have to have a bill. It takes years to change. Tariffs, Trump changes it on a fly.
So that's not supposed to be the way that it works. Tariffs are
But that
supposed to be
is-
changed
but-
by
but
Congress.
do you acknowledge that is the way that it works?
Because he's abusing illegally the system
Sure,
right now, yes.
but that is the way that it works. Therefore, you can see that the tariff, we might have 50% tariffs on Brazil, which, by the way, is only on certain. There's a bunch of exemptions too there, but those can be turned off on a whim. Same with other countries,
Yeah, but we don't want an economic policy that the lead executive, that the president
We
can turn
do-
on and off whenever he wants. Do you understand how
if
catastrophic that is?
it's in pursuit of our America's interests.
But
which
it's not. But we
there's
don't know.
a-
It's going to be a pursuit of whoever's in office at that particular point in time.
But who's representing America? What is Trump?
No,
Trump
he
is
can't
the
even.
chief
He's a lame
executive.
duck president right now. He can't be elected again. Why do we know he's representing
Well,
America?
I mean, obviously Trump himself can't be elected again, but it
so
is the
why would
chief
we
exec-
trust him with the levers on our
Well, because we
economy?
voted for him. He's the chief executive, right?
We
It's
didn't
his
vote
call.
for it to give him unilateral control of the
That is-
economy.
but that is just how the mechanic currently works.
Because he's breaking the law. Yes,
He is not breaking
He's
the
breaking
law.
the law. Of
What
course.
law is he breaking?
The thing that allows him to do that is there's an Emergency Powers Act. I believe it's it's either the Tariff or the Trade Emergency Powers Act by Congress that allows him to declare a national emergency, which gives him the ability to do tariffs unilaterally. He declared that our trade deficits were national emergencies and that's where he gets the power to tariff the rest of the world. Obviously, that's not the way that was intended to work.
We can argue about whether or not
do you
he's
think
in his
that
right
the president of the United States should be able to unilaterally do economic policy?
Maybe not. Well,
maybe not. We don't have a strong opinion.
Fiscal policy, I think that they have a huge
fiscal comes from the budget is by
executive.
Congress. No, it's by Congress.
Well, yeah, but it's also the executive.
No, it's by Congress. It's by Congress. We wouldn't want the president to have unilateral control over.
That's a totally different debate, and maybe things will change in the future. But the fact of the matter is that I'm in favor of the lower taxes.
Okay,
that's all.
Okay, so that was probably the only decent clip out of all of these. I just wanted to play everything just to be fair to everybody else. So let's get into this a little bit. Okay, so I kind of agree and disagree. I think Destiny is right and he's wrong on talking about using the tariffs as an economic leverage against these other countries, right? Donald Trump is doing this like an expert, going through and leveraging tariffs, implementing the tariffs, leveraging those tariffs to get good trade deals, right? Destiny says, well, we could do this without the tariffs. Sure, but we would not have that leverage. We would not have that economic incentive to push and get a better deal. Like, Destiny's just totally wrong about that. We could, but once again, we could get a much better deal by having these tariffs and leveraging those tariffs against these trade deals that we're working out. And he's talking about, oh, we haven't made any significant trade deals, right? Yeah, we have, and that's what they're working on, right? The whole 90 deals in 90 days, I don't know why the Trump administration does stuff like this, right? Trump is bombastic. He's very hyperbolic with his speech. So he says things, right? You always pay attention to what Trump does, not what he says. What he's doing is good for this country, right? Now, a lot of people disagree with that, with the tariffs and all this other stuff, but I like the idea, implementing these tariffs. Okay, so a lot of people would make the argument talking about the price increases and all this other stuff, right? Now, I was talking about earlier how these companies, they're paying the vast majority of the tariff. That's good. And for one reason, right? Now, you would make the argument that, well, over time, they would normalize all of that to where you're paying all of it. Yes, I totally agree with that. But in the meantime, before the negotiations, they're paying the tariff. Though they're paying the majority of that tariff, we're not. Once we get to that trade deal, the tariff rate goes down, right? So it kind of normalizes, equalizes everything out. I like that idea, simply because regardless of any tariff or anything like this, the market is going to dictate the price. You can't just raise the price. Say Donald Trump tariffs everything from China. They can't just raise the prices in the United States. People will stop buying those products, for crying out loud. So they must absorb that tariff if they want to be competitive, right? This is why the tariffs over a long term only work on goods that the U.S. can manufacture themselves, right? Because outside of that, then you're just raising costs for no apparent reason, right? This is why a lot of people said that Trump's Liberation Day tariffs didn't make any sense, right? On the surface, they don't make any sense at all. I was the first one to agree with that. But you got to look a little bit deeper, right? It's a long game going on here, right? There's strategy to this. It's economic leverage to get a better trade deal, to get rid of some of those trade barriers, what they were talking about earlier, market manipulations and all this other stuff, to try to eliminate those, to get the United States a much better deal. Now, the trade deficits and all that stuff, you can't get rid of that. I'm sorry. Look, those are just not going to go away, especially to a country that doesn't manufacture a lot of goods. I understand what he's trying to do with this, and I understand why, right? But those are never going to go away regardless. We are a consumer economy, a service economy, right? We need to kind of move into a tech economy, if you will, more focused on the tech industry, because that's where everything seems to be going. So we need to do that. But in the meantime, I think what Donald Trump is doing is pretty good, but let's move on to what he was talking about after that. When they were discussing investment, and Destiny says, well, they always invest. Well, that's a true statement, but once again, that is leaving out context around investment into the United States. Donald Trump, that's another thing that Donald Trump does with these tariffs, right? He goes over and he starts negotiating, and he gets these people to invest more into the United States. He's already guaranteed upwards of $10 trillion. I think it's like $9 trillion of investment into the United States in his first 6 months of being the president of the United States. You go back and look at the Biden administration, he barely had that much over his entire 4 years, right? Investment was small during the Biden administration. I think Biden dropped the ball, right? That's another argument they were making earlier. Well, Biden kept the tariffs. Yeah, he did, because they were making too much money off of those tariffs. And they were using that as an economic leverage because they were just making too much money. But Biden is not going to do anything near what Trump is doing. Biden is not a negotiator. He is a politician. I don't like politicians running this country. This is why I always advocate for getting rid of Congress. Not the institution, the people that reside within the institution. They all need to be wiped away, and we need all new congressmen, for crying out loud. That, for one, or get rid of the lobby interests, the corporate lobby interests. I think that would fix Congress. All this nonsense, I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but all this nonsense with term limits and stopping them from investing into the stock markets, that's all distractions, folks. If you think about it deeply, what does it hurt that these people enrich themselves? Doesn't hurt anything. All of their trades are public. You, as just an American citizen, if you have a few extra dollars laying around, you can make the same investments that they make. Follow their trades, and you can do just as good as Nancy Pelosi, as a matter of fact. That's why I don't mind these people enriching themselves off of legislation, essentially. It's fine with that. And then the term limits, right? I don't think the term limits is a good idea for Congress, because these people go in, they know how Congress works, they know how to talk to people, negotiate with people, get people on board with legislation. That is not something that a junior congressman, a freshman congressman can just go in and do. You can't rally a bunch of Republicans or Democrats to sign on to your legislation as easily as somebody that's been there for 20 years can do, right? So I think term limits are a bad idea. But the problem is these congressmen, what they do is all day long, they fundraise for the RNC or the DNC or for this charity or whatever it may be. Fundraise for this PAC that ultimately will give them money that will fund their own campaign. You got AIPAC, you got all these super PACs and all this other stuff. Their fundraising is the majority of what they do. So I think that needs to stop. Get rid of the lobby interests, because I've made the joke before in the past that what Congress actually does is fundraise, 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 dinner with a lobbyist, fundraise, dinner with a lobbyist, smoke a prostitute, fundraise, fundraise, dinner with a lobbyist. That's all they do, folks. And maybe we'll throw in some legislation after that last smoke a prostitute, right? Maybe they'll go on right to that right after. You never know. But getting back to this, like Donald Trump has secured trillions of dollars of investment. Can we say the same thing about Joe Biden? Did Joe Biden actually secure investment? No, he didn't. People invested into the United States, but it wasn't the president of the United States that secured that investment. The only thing good that Joe Biden did, essentially, well, there's a couple of things I'll give him credit for, right? Getting rid of the junk fees from the banks and credit card companies and all that. That's a good idea. Sure, that's great. I don't think they should be charging because you overdraft, right? That should be fair. If you're doing business with them, you're making them money, you're keeping them afloat, essentially. They should give you that courtesy. But the CHIPS Act, there was some good that came out of that CHIPS Act. Now, a lot of it was garbage, which is generally most legislation is garbage. Most of it, they just tack on so much crap, pork and all this other spending garbage. Just makes it totally garbage. But there were some good things that they were discussing in there, like, restricting certain chips to China because they're an adversary and we don't want them gaining an advantage on us. You might say that's unfair, but hey, when you're at the top, you got to do what you got to do to stay at the top. And that was a good idea. There's some investment, right? This is what Trump is doing. It's my next video, by the way. It's something that just came down the pipeline. Trump took some of those grants that were issued under the CHIPS Act and he bought 10% stake into Intel. Now, I've researched it a little bit so far. I'm about to cover that on my next video, so y'all stay tuned. But that seems like a good idea. There's precedent for this in the past, right? The American government has bought into like coal mining and steel manufacturing, GM and Dodge and Ford and all these places back in 2008. Into banks, they've invested into they have ownership, and I think that's a good thing. But we'll discuss that on my next video. But I just love these ideas right here, right? I think the tariffs are doing good. Like I said, there's multiple reasons for why Trump is doing this, and people just can't seem to see it. You get the left, they're screeching, banging their face against the freaking wall, talking about tariffs are going to implode the economy. You got people like Destiny saying it's catastrophic. Oh, prices already went. They went up a little bit. Not much, but that's to be expected. Once again, but they're also not factoring in the fact that Donald Trump is taking taxes down. He's giving everybody tax breaks. Oh, and then the left, they come in, oh, well, it's disproportionately affecting the top, the elites or whatever. Well, yeah, that's because they disproportionately pay the vast majority of taxes. But Democrats, they don't tell you those things. And I can't stand that. That's something the corporate press does a lot. They manipulate. They'll give you one side of the story by telling you the big, beautiful Bill Act disproportionately gives tax breaks to the rich. Well, they give tax breaks to everybody. The bottom 40%, once you factor in tax credits, they don't pay taxes at all, for crying out loud. Most people, sure, there's outliers. But for the most part, I think it's the bottom 40% after credits don't pay any taxes, folks. And that's the very same people the Democrats are preaching to, talking about tax breaks for the rich. And people get on board with that because it sounds enticing. They're like, oh, we've been slighted. It induces rage into people. We've been slighted. We're not given these tax breaks? What are you talking about, my dude? You don't pay taxes in the first place. It is what it is. But I think with everything that Donald Trump's doing in concert, you got to look at this thing holistically. You can't just look at the tariffs and say it's catastrophic, right? Because of the tax policy that Donald Trump is implementing, right? He's reducing the burden on the lower class, building out the middle. And I don't know what the top is not really affected at all, to be honest with you. They're rarely affected by anything anyway. So it kind of doesn't matter. But, I think this is going to, if everything works as it should, if everything goes according to plan, which it seems to be so far, everything's looking good, there should be massive investment into the United States, and our economy should be booming by 2028. For crying out loud. I know in the meantime it's going to be a little bit rough on some people. Prices are going to go up, but wages should start coming up. As a matter of fact, they're already starting to show signs. Wage growth is increasing already, which is a very good sign, y'all. The unemployment is still pretty low right now. Consumer confidence is high. We've been getting some really, really good economic numbers. When Liberation Day came out, Donald Trump, the corporate press, they fell out. They melted completely down, talking about with the stock market, as if that's the only indicator that the economy is doing any good at all. It's ridiculous. It's utter ridiculous. I said it on this channel at the time. It's going to bounce back, folks. Just calm down. Just chill. It's going to bounce back. And it did. And now it's higher than ever once again. But, wages need to come up. The cost of living needs to go down. That's just facts that need to take place. We're never going to get back to where we used to be, folks. That's just never going to happen, right? Like back in the 60s and 70s and all this. We're never going to get back to that. I'm sorry, it's a sad truth, but I think personally that you take a ship in the ocean, right? We've struck an iceberg already. There's nothing we can do about it. And it seems like Democrats and Republicans alike have been just, let's ignore it, let's keep going, let's continue to do this. And they've just been ignoring the massive hole that is in the ship, and we've been taking on water for decades at this point. And what Donald Trump is doing is like, look, this might be a little bit risky, But I think we're going to send some underwater welders in there with some steel plates to try to plug this hole that is in the ship so we stop taking on water. Will it work? It looks like it's going to. It appears that they've already welded part of that plate at the top. We got to see if they can weld down the sides and into the bottom and completely seal that hole off. Once we do that, then we can worry about pumping some of this water out, the debt, in other words, pumping some of that out, which I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen, folks. But we've got to stop bleeding deficit spending, for crying out loud. That is a massive problem in this country. Massive problem. $1.8 trillion. It's truly insane. But, I've rambled on for quite a while, so y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. I'm sure you've got your opinions. So y'all do that. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you like what you heard. You want more videos like this, let me know down in the comment section. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. That would be great. And if you would be so inclined, click that join button. Sign up and become a member. Help this channel grow so we can get the message out about what the corporate press, about all the lies in the media and all that nonsense. Join the movement, pushing back against the narrative, folks. But y'all do all that for me, and y'all remember that God is always with us, and he loves each and every one of you out there. But y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.